Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Pure Digital Passion podcast with me, Moses Kamibaro. I'm so delighted today to have Nikki Germany, the CEO of Moringa, one of the African continent's leading technology education institutions. Nikki brings 15 years of experience across global technology and education brands with leadership roles that include industry head at Google, director of operations at Bridge International Academies, and chief growth officer at Copia. She spent her career driving scale, impact, and innovation in fast-growing, mission-driven organizations. At Moringa, Nikki now leads the strategic direction of an organization that's helped thousands of learners transition into software engineering, data science, and cybersecurity, as well as DevOps, AI, and more. Not just in Kenya, but across Africa. Under her leadership, Moringa is focused on expanding programs, deepening industry partnerships, and making high-quality, job-ready technology education more accessible to both students and working professionals. In this episode, we'll explore Nikki's origin story, coming from the land of Oz, and also her career journey, what makes Moringa different in a crowded edtech space, and the programs that they offer and who they are designed for, and where she sees tech education heading in the next few years. We'll wrap up with a practical advice for aspiring students and professionals who want future-proof their careers through technology. Nikki, it's a pleasure to have you on the Pure Digital Passion podcast.
Thanks so much, Moses. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been talking about this for a while, so I'm glad we finally got together.
So, Nikki, I'd like to sort of start from the very beginning.
Sure.
You and I think we've known each other probably the last couple of years.
Yep.
When you first, came into obviously Moringa.
Yep.
And I'd just like to give our audience a flavor of who you are, where you come from, what your origin story is, so that they can kind of appreciate your background.
Great. Yeah. Well, I grew up in the village. Like literally Shags, but Shags in Australia.
Yes.
And so a small town in rural Australia. And I always knew that I wanted to do more and I wanted to see more. And I knew that in order to do that, I'd really need to create my own opportunities because a lot of people just stay in the town and never leave. And so I studied hard, I worked hard, and I really focused on creating those opportunities. Went to university, money was scarce, worked full-time or studying part-time. And then I got a job with an organization and had worked with them for a few years and decided I wanted to live that dream of traveling overseas.
Oh, fantastic.
So I asked for a sabbatical and time off without pay. And at that stage, not many people were doing that. And it wasn't very common. And everybody I talked to said, no, they'll never say yes.
Stick
they'll
around.
never say yes.
Yeah.
And I asked and they said yes.
Wow.
And that taught me a really important lesson about don't make decisions for other people. Just ask.
Don't
Maybe
assume.
the answer's, don't
might just
assume the
say
answer's
yes.
no.
Wow.
Just ask. The answer might be yes, it might be no, but just ask. Don't assume it's no before you ask.
And actually, that's such a profound foundational philosophy because in life, sometimes you never know unless you ask.
Absolutely.
And if you're willing to do that, then it forms the foundation for future things that you do, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And so that's a piece of advice that I give to anybody that I mentor or coach is coming through. And so I took that sabbatical. I ended up working in one of the overseas offices of that same company, and then began my career sort of moving around the world, working for that company and for other companies. And during that time, started working in technology companies. So I started working for a company called Expedia, which is a huge travel tech organization, and then moved on to Google, where I was a head of industry there. And really just kind of took advantage of a lot of different opportunities. And again, really focused on how can I create my own opportunities? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And what do I need to do to get there? So I wanted to live in a non-English speaking country.
Wow.
I wanted to get my MBA in the US. I wanted to move from my functional expertise into general management. So I made really deliberate decisions that sort of drove me there. And then after moving around the world, working for these great organizations, I took another sabbatical and spent a lot of time here on the African continent.
Okay.
And really just felt so at home here, was really just blown away by the energy, the entrepreneurship, the innovation, the creativity, the hustle, and was like, you know what, I think I want to work here.
And was that Kenya specifically?
Well, it was sort of Africa generally. I was traveling there. And then when I was thinking, okay, I want to work on the continent in sub-Saharan Africa, where should I go? And then after sort of doing some research, I was like, let me try Kenya. And so I started networking And when I found a job, I moved here, and that was 12 years ago.
Okay.
And so, yeah, Kenya's very much my home now. It was a great move, and yeah, really happy here.
Now, I'd really love to hear your perspective about Kenya, because even for me, somebody who's been in the tech profession now, I think probably far too long, probably close to 30 years, because I was here the early days when we were connecting people to the internet. For instance, that was my first job,
Yeah.
you know. And one of the things that I always found peculiar as somebody who's based here, works here, has been part of this ecosystem that long, is there's this sort of peculiarity, or the fact that it seems like technology is very endemic to the Kenyan DNA for whatever reason, I don't know. But even going back 25 years, I can remember very distinctly the companies I worked for where, you know, one of them, Africa Online, had operations across the African continent. But shock and behold, Kenya was producing 50% of group revenues. And I think it comes back to some of those cultural or technology nuances. I don't know what it is. And it lives in M-Pesa, it lives in the internet.
Yeah.
Is that something that you picked up as well that maybe appealed to you, that Kenya was a very technology-forward market?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I saw the innovation and the entrepreneurship that was coming with that, and the energy around the startup sector here that was using the technologies, and everybody was embracing these technologies for where are we going for the future and solving really interesting problems. And so that was very much a big part of why I wanted to move here, because it was that using technology to solve big problems in an innovative way.
Fantastic. So obviously you're at Google, where you did the industry headpiece. Then you worked at Bridge, and you were driving operations at scale. You were at Copia. What are the sort of the one or two big lessons from these roles that you've carried directly into your work as CEO at Moringa?
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest one has been around scaling. And really what you need to do to scale a business. And you actually have to, you know, when you start a business, it's all very exciting and you're just trying to figure things out. But then if you really want that business sustainable in the long term, you have to think very deliberately about decisions you need to make, about organizational structure, about technology and systems that you need to incorporate, about ways that you need to go about doing things in order to be able to scale quickly, but at a lower unit economic cost. And so it's really been around scale, I think, that I've really learned a lot here in the market. You know, at Bridge, we were opening 50 schools a semester.
What?
Yes, 150 a year. At Copia, we went from 50 agents to 50,000 agents in the time that I was there. And at Moringa, we've gone from 4 learners to nearly 5,000 learners last year. And you don't
hang on, 5,000 learners in 1 year?
In 1 year, nearly 5,000
Wow.
learners in 1 year last year at Moringa, yes.
So you're all about scaling.
Absolutely. And so you don't get to that kind of scale without some deliberate thought about organizational decisions that you need to make. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I've taken away from those previous experiences.
But I think there must have been, again, we're talking about an emerging market, you know, Kenya's, you know, it's obviously you were probably writing the playbook as you did it, isn't
absolutely,
it? In each
absolutely.
instance, right?
Yeah, which is part of the great thing about being here, is that a lot of this hasn't been done before. And so you really get to create that playbook yourself and figure it out as you go along. And so that's incredibly exciting, but also can have huge impact. And so that's what we see when you can scale, you can have huge impact. And that's a lot of what attracted me to Moringa, is the vision and the opportunity for scale.
I'm picking up something here just out of this conversation. It almost feels to me like you are entrepreneurial by nature. You know, because it seems there's a tendency to work in sort of young, high potential businesses, plugging in and helping them bloom, as it were.
It's so funny because I never think of myself as an entrepreneur, and I began my career in very large formal organizations.
Yeah.
However, over time, and particularly since coming to Kenya, I've really enjoyed that entrepreneurial part of the role, and really being in these organizations that have, you know, got some traction, but how do we really make them blossom?
Yeah. I'm seeing that's like one of your key competencies, clearly. And I think the word they use is intrapreneur. So you're in an organization, but you have entrepreneurial tendencies, right? Yeah. Ultimately. So I'm really curious. This is interesting because I think even some of the original founders of Moringa, I know people like Snehar who works there, or is I think on your board right now, and he's a good friend.
Yeah.
But I'm just really keen to understand, how did the Moringa thing happen? Because I remember when we found out you were joining and all, and everybody's like, wow, she's joining Moringa. That's interesting. And I think it was, for me, kind of indicative of something strange, something big is happening here. And if they're bringing Nikki, there's an ambition that's coming into play. But I'd love to learn about how that happened and just sort of how that came about, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah. Well, firstly, I want to give a shout out to Audrey, our founder at Moringa, who did an amazing job of getting us started, and previous CEOs like Sneha. And I was approached by a headhunter for the role.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what really attracted me to it was this incredible mix of three core things that came from my past. One is I actually started my career in human resources. So I have this natural passion for people development, this natural passion for skills development. How do you get people into employment? How do you develop careers? So that's always been an interest of mine. Secondly, I'd transitioned from that into business management. And so my profession was now running businesses. And a lot of those businesses were in technology. And I loved technology because of how dynamic it is, how fast changing it is, how innovative it is. And so when I saw this role, I was like, oh, wow, that's a role that just combines all three of those things in one place. That's amazing. And as well, I knew of Moringa. We had hired from Moringa. And, the impact that you can have was really meaningful to me as well. So commercial organization, scaling organization in technology, doing skills development. And I was like, wow, I can't believe all of this is in one place.
Fantastic. And maybe that's a right segue for my next question. Again, when you think about your current leadership style and what you've had to unlearn and relearn to lead an organization like Moringa, what are some of the things that you've picked up along the way from that perspective?
Yeah, I think, and it's not really so much about learning and relearning, it's just about always having to keep in mind that when you're growing fast, there's always so much to do in that moment. And you're sort of like, okay, what are the things we're getting done this quarter? What are the things we're getting done this year? And it can be very easy to get pulled into that time frame. Okay, what's for this quarter? What's for this year? And so I always, in all of my roles, need to really make sure that I have a routine where I'm stepping back and doing a lot of things where you're thinking about where are we 3 years down the track? Where are we 5 years down the track? And what are the things that need to be happening now that won't be impacting this quarter, but are going to be impacting in 3 years' time?
Wow.
And so that's something then in all of my roles that I've really needed to continue to focus on and also get the rest of the team thinking in those types of horizons.
I love that. So you're kind of thinking backwards in the sense, if we're going to be at this point, what do we need to do now to start building the foundation for that?
Yeah, exactly.
Through the process.
Exactly.
So I want to shift gears a bit. I want us to talk a little bit about Moringa itself as an organization. And of course, there are many who may not know it. I'm in the technology space, and I do believe we have, even in my own company, we have people who've been at Moringa. They don't maybe know the full story. And maybe in simple terms, could you give us a sense of, who's Moringa, what is Moringa about, what is it that you bring to the marketplace, and what are the things that set you apart from others who might be offering something similar?
Sure. So it's actually really simple. We are Kenya's premier tech, data, and AI skilling provider and looking to become Africa's premier.
Nice.
So we'll talk more about that later. And really our whole vision, the whole reason that we exist as an organization is to develop the tech talent that the world needs. And when we think about tech talent, we think about a few different things. First of all, what does tech mean? What does tech, data, and AI mean? So we actually have sort of 4 different verticals of learning that we focus on. One is data and all of the different things you need to know around data. One is software development. One is cybersecurity. And one is now AI. And we think about a different range of learners, from entry-level talent through to working professionals, through to corporations who actually want bespoke, customized training.
You also do that?
We do. Yeah. So corporations who need bespoke, customized training, usually around data or AI, to come in and train their teams. So that's what we do, and that's who we do it for.
So for me, what's also peculiar is that we've also seen, especially post-COVID and even during COVID, a lot of online schools have flourished. I don't need to mention their names. I think they're well known.
Yeah.
And I think for many, whether it's a parent, a student, a working professional, there might be this sense of what does Moringa bring that is different from one of these other, possibly online platforms, maybe even cheaper. What do you tell such people, or what could you share with them here that would encourage them to consider Moringa as the best alternative?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're really well known for is really being close to industry. And so we really want to make sure that everything that we're doing is industry led. So that means focusing on the skill sets that are practical, the skill sets that are hands-on, lots of projects, lots of labs, that really make sure you're coming out with those skill sets. And we actually have industry panels for each of those 4 verticals that I mentioned that we meet with regularly to help make sure that our curriculum is completely up to date, and that we've actually been able to, that we're actually providing the skill set you need when you go into the workplace. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that we're instructor-led. And so we actually call our instructors technical mentors because they act more as a guide through the process rather than just stand up in front of a classroom and tell you things.
A lecture series.
Exactly. Yeah. There's very little lecturing in what we do. And so our technical mentors are a really important part of what makes Moringa special because you really do have somebody there who can help guide you through this journey because it's quite rigorous, right, to learn these technology stacks. And so that's something that also makes us really differentiated in the market. We are TVET accredited, so we know that there's a quality piece that comes with that, and we're very proud of that. And again, just talking about our connections with employers, we have a lot of employer partnerships. We've created these relationships over 10 years. And so for people who are concerned about employment outcomes, our entry-level talent, their parents, we have these relationships that have gone back 10 years of people hiring people from Moringa, of having a good reputation in the market, of being well-known in industry.
And also that's brilliant because what you're doing is basically you're making sure your programs are fit for purpose in terms of it's not a generic global program. It's something that is aligned to the market.
All the time.
And then the fact that you're consulting with industry and the sectors, you're really sort of ensuring that whatever we're putting out there is what they need, as opposed to somebody coming in and then they have to kind of retrain them according to what their requirements might be.
Absolutely.
So I think that almost really, that kind of secures it, doesn't it? It's fit for purpose and it's cognizant of what the market actually wants and needs. Beyond the hard technical skills, obviously somebody doing data science or, cybersecurity, that's really technical. There's increasingly a discussion around soft skills. And I see this also when I'm recruiting, where you can have a remarkably talented technical worker, but they're horrible on the human side in terms of how they interact with teams, cultural nuances that are not quite right, things like mindset. Nowadays we talk a lot about even things like, mental health or even mental toughness that sometimes we feel is lacking in the workplace. How do you build these dimensions into the people who are coming into your organization? Yeah,
so with our bootcamps, which are our longer, intensive, rigorous programs in software development, data science, cybersecurity, where a lot of people are then looking at getting their first roles into industry, is really where we do a lot of work around this. We do it with our working professional programs as well, but it's not quite as rigorous. And so with our boot camps, we actually have weeks dedicated to focusing on these types of skills. And so we actually don't call them soft skills. We call them durable skills or human skills.
Oh, nice. I like that.
And we talk about, it's our career readiness incubator. And basically it's all around what do you need to do to be ready for the workplace? So there's a whole bunch of skilling that you go through in these types of programs. But of course, they're not the types of things that you can just learn once and then apply. So what we then do is we make sure that our technical mentors are taking those skill sets and reinforcing them as people go through the technical curriculum. So you may have learned something about problem solving, which is one of the core soft skills, one of the core durable skills that everybody's talking about. And so then that means that when you're in your technical classes, there's a lot of emphasis on what's the problem that you're solving. How do you think critically about the different solutions to that problem? And so in that way, it's not only a focus on the durable skills, but it's integrated throughout the whole curriculum. So that's fantastic. A really, really important part of our boot camps. And one of the things that our employers say to us about our alumni is that they come out with a sort of a rigor to their thinking and a rigor to their approach and that mental toughness, because the programs are rigorous. And so that mental toughness, dealing with a lot of priorities at the same time, having to work in groups, having to really manage your time effectively. That's also something that comes out of our programs, because a lot of our learners haven't been in that situation before. And so that's something that a lot of our alumni say to us and our employers say to us that they see with people who come out of Moringa programs.
So it's clearly much more than the technical competence,
Definitely,
right? And it's really about, as you prepare them for the workplace, even their mental model of how they do things. And I think I particularly like the bit about the critical thinking, because in the workplace, or if you're in a situation, let's say you're working in a software development business, and how do you connect what you're building to the business problem?
Yeah.
And what are the outcomes that are intended? So you need to be able to think, like a business, solving a problem, that ultimately the input that you're providing then creates the value on the other side of whatever it is you're developing. And this is something I've seen that, traditionally has been a problem, where we meet a lot of young, very technically capable people. They want to even do startups. And then you kind of, because I've had my opportunities to mentor such people, and I'm like, I always have to pull them back and say, no, are you solving a real problem? Are you looking at this in all its dimensions, so that you're not building, let's say, a solution looking for a problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Which is the inverse of what it should be, right?
Yeah. And we always talk about really what technology is a technical solution to a problem that exists. Technology in and of itself is, it needs to be there to solve a problem.
Correct.
And one of the things that we do in our, particularly in our boot camps as well, is we have a very long capstone project at the end. And so often that includes real world employer problems, either from our employer partnerships or from networks that our students have. And they spend a lot of time actually completing real life problems.
Fantastic. Do you find, and I've seen this with some of our past employees, not necessarily from Moringa, but just in the workplace and in sort of the education system in Kenya, we're seeing also what I like to call a class of, I'd call it a student worker, meaning these guys are still doing the courses, but they're doing real world hustles. Meaning that they're building a website somewhere, a mobile app somewhere, a small payroll solution. Do you see that happening with your school?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, lots of our students are interested in doing their own thing, whether that be actually creating their own company as an entrepreneur or doing some freelance work. And so we see that a lot, and we encourage that. I mean, the programs themselves, you're pretty focused on those programs, and then you're doing that through the projects. But afterwards, a lot of people do their own. Do their own thing.
And it's so funny, because I think in my experience, what I've also seen is when you have people coming in, even if they're interns and they're kind of doing this dual thing already, there are instances where, shockingly, sometimes their work is even of a higher standard than the fully paid employee, which can be quite intimidating to the incumbents. And it's just because they've already been doing, as you said, the rigors of real work, meeting the real world, not conceptually or academically. So that's really interesting. I'd like to get into the programs that you offer, really essentially the actual product, so to speak. And maybe a big picture, there are core programs that you definitely have. You talked about software engineering, you talked about data science, cybersecurity, also AI. How do these all fit together in terms of the overall value proposition from Moringa?
Yeah, sure. So, we really try to focus on these 4 different verticals, so that no matter what it is that you're interested in going into in tech, data, and AI, then there's something for you.
Okay.
And what we've done is build a learning pathway within each of those verticals.
Okay.
So most of those verticals have an introductory program. So that might be, say, 5 weeks long. And that's if you're not really sure if you want to go into this, or you think that you do want to go into this, but you're really coming in with absolutely no experience, and you just want to get a little bit up to speed before going into the boot camps. And so for those people who fall into one of those 2 camps, we have our introductory programs. Then we have our boot camps, which are the 6 months or approximately 6 months full-time programs that are really designed for you to either get your first job in tech, switch from another career into tech, get the skills you need to set up your own tech company or become an entrepreneur. And so that's the sort of really rigorous boot camp. Then we have our sort of more advanced courses that are designed for working professionals to upskill.
Okay.
Sometimes that's non-tech professionals who want to upskill in something like Gen AI. Sometimes it's tech professionals who want to upskill in something like DevOps. And sometimes it's people who have been working but want to upskill in something like data analytics.
Okay.
And those are shorter programs that run for about 12 weeks and mostly part-time. And so we have sort of this learning pathway within each of those verticals.
So ultimately, what I'm hearing you say is that you're really sort of able to cover the entire spectrum, meaning if I'm sort of a fourth form leaver or I'm in the working space or I just want to try something new, you pretty much can cater to any one of those individuals, right?
Yeah, when we look at who's taking our program, so if we think about our entry-level talent, then we tend to have people coming to us between high school and campus.
Yes.
Because there's the long gap,
period,
the interim period, that long gap there. So a lot of people take a Moringa program during that period of time. We have a lot of people who are already at campus and are studying something and want to complement that with technology. And we have people who have finished campus and want to add this as practical skill set on top. And then we have people who are deciding not to go to campus because they're like, I just want to get the skill sets that I need. I don't want to do 4 years while I wait to get that skill set. Let me get that skill set now instead of going to campus. So we have sort of 4 different groups. Then when you think about our working professional group, we have career switchers. So you may have been in a particular field and you want to come into technology.
Yes.
We have non-tech people who want to upskill in things like AI. And then we have tech people who are also looking to upskill. And of course, as I said, we also do the training for corporates.
Now, technology moves fast, as you know.
Yes.
I mean, probably 2-3 years ago, the idea of having an AI program wasn't even there. Of course, you had data science by then.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with the fact that there's this constant, almost frenetic pace behind it? And even right now, I mean, I've been dabbling with something called cloud co-work.
Yes.
And I stopped being techie many years ago, although I did a lot of this stuff back in the day. But I'm just like astounded at the pace of progress. So how are you guys keeping up?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We thought it was fast before, but now in the last couple of years, it's unbelievable. And so we actually have a team of curriculum engineers on staff, and their whole job is to really understand what's the latest that's out there and quickly get that integrated into our programs. And so that's one way that we really keep up with what's happening, is that we have people who's dedicated to doing that. We're also always looking globally and seeing, what are the leading institutions offering globally to just make sure that, if there's anything new coming up. And so, we're constantly focusing on how do we make sure that we've got the latest curriculum. And of course, as I mentioned, always talking to our industry advisory councils to make sure that they're saying, like, this is the tech stack that we need. These are the skill sets that we need, and incorporating those.
So let's talk a little bit about AI specifically, because I think that's on everyone's, lips nowadays, AI this, AI that, different use cases. I feel like personally there's possibly too much hype. Sometimes it's very hard to figure out what is hype and substance. And of course now you have a program that you're pushing around this as well. So how are you sort of weaving in this AI literacy or competence into the programs that you have, and also for both beginners and advanced people who may be like the working professionals who want to AI enable something they've already been doing for a while?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, we're starting with the programs that one aspect of that is that we start with the programs that we have.
Yes.
And so building in the AI tools into those programs. So for example, our data analytics program works with Power BI and Excel.
Okay.
So as part of that program, all of the AI co-pilots that go with those programs are taught in our data analytics.
Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
They're taught in the data analytics program. Same with cybersecurity. So we really want to make sure you get the foundations of what you need, but at the end of the modules, we're making sure that you understand all of the AI ways that that's being approached, and from both an offensive and defensive perspective now. So we've been very thoughtful about incorporating AI into our existing programs. Secondly, we've created the whole sort of AI track, our AI Academy. And that includes a whole range of new programs that we just started last year. So for non-technical people, we have our Introduction to Gen AI program.
Nice.
It's just a few sessions in the evenings and really helps you understand what tools are out there and how can you properly use those tools to be more effective in your work. And a lot of working professionals doing that. We also have an AI for marketers and are building out more functional specific AI programs. And we have launched an AI agents program, so workflow automation. So, how are you using N8N and other sort of automation tools to be able to get AI to build your own agents and do your own automation tools? And we're also working on some more advanced programs such as AI engineering, which we should be announcing shortly. And also on the data side, we've always had machine learning as part of our data science program, but we're also looking at a more advanced machine learning program. So we're both incorporating it into our existing programs and building out new programs.
So the fact that you just mentioned agents and creating sort of workflows and developing agents, I mean, that's really the most cutting edge stuff that's happening globally, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So for me, that suggests that Moringa is not just building for Kenya. You're really building a globally competitive training approach using the very latest, presumably methodologies and sort of the cutting edge stuff. I mean, that's what I'm hearing here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm really glad you mentioned that actually, because one of the things that's happened more and more over the last couple of years is that we've just gotten more and more tapped into the global marketplace. And a lot of countries in the global north are realizing that they don't have the demographics for the work that they're going to need done in the future. And they're actually looking to the African continent for talent. And a lot of that talent is in technology. And so tomorrow I'm meeting with 7 companies from Germany who are here specifically to find out what it is that we do at Moringa and what our graduates can do, because they're looking at how they can find talent for the future. And so we're very focused not just on what's needed for the Kenyan market, but what's needed for the global market.
So Moringa is building for the whole world.
Absolutely. We develop tech talent the world needs.
That's fantastic. How do you, one of the things that I've always found challenging in recruiting talent in the technology space is that many who might come through the standard curriculums, whether it's through our national universities or some of the private universities, quite often it feels like the programs are a few years behind what the realities are. And I don't know, I'm imagining that's why some students are coming to you, because they see the gap and they want to close that gap. But do you say in those instances, is there any remedy for that? Because it almost feels like you're building or learning on things that are 5, sometimes 10 years old.
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean, what are your thoughts around that?
And that's precisely the reason why a lot of people complement the programs that they're going for, say degrees, with a Moringa certificate, because we are able to be agile. And in technology, you really need to be able to be as agile and as fast as possible, which we just talked about before.
Yes.
And so we do find that because of that, a lot of people come to us, even if they're getting sort of, we have a lot of people who have a Bachelor of Computer Science and then also get the Moringa certificate.
So they kind of bolt that onto the same.
Yeah.
What about flexibility in time? Because again, working professionals, again, of course, post-COVID, we see that remote and working remotely and learning remotely have become a thing as well. So I don't know how you have set up to sort of, deliver learning in a flexible way to your stakeholders, whether it's, somebody who's just finished high school, all the way to maybe a veteran of 20 years in a computer, technology department in a company. How do you cater to that?
Yeah. So it's funny because a lot of people think of Moringa as a school, as a place that you go to.
Yes.
And actually we're not like that at all anymore. 70% of our learners are fully virtual. Only
Really?
30% of our learners actually go into a physical space. And all of our programs that we offer are offered fully virtually and also part-time. We have full-time and part-time options.
So you've got some blended
for all
learning
of our
options
programs.
as well.
Exactly. So there's just a lot of flexibility with learning models. And we're actually more 70% are online, 50% are part-time versus 50% full-time of our learners. So we're actually already catering to people who need more flexibility in their learning.
And would you say that it's really a function of discretion where somebody decides, how do I want to learn? Some people maybe are better in a classroom environment, some prefer virtual.
Yeah, some of it's just location because we have people not just from Nairobi, obviously, but actually all over Kenya and all over the world. We have people studying in the UK, we have people studying in Australia who are taking our programs. So some of it's location and some of it is just where you are in life. If you're a working professional, then chances are you've got a busy life. You're also potentially a parent and got a lot of family responsibilities. And so, you don't want to be driving anywhere. It's not practical. Yeah. So we're really making sure that we offer all kinds of learning options.
I want to talk a little bit about impact in terms of what has Moringa accomplished. Maybe there's some anecdotes of some of your students, some choice ones you might want to share. What's been that outcome, that impact that those who have gone through and seen something remarkable happen to them? Do you have any stories you can share?
Yeah, let me share a couple. So we actually recently had one of our alumni come back and speak to our staff. And her name's Joanna, and she graduated from our software development program a couple of years back. And she became a game developer and a game designer.
Nice.
And she's actually been able to raise funding, 6 million shillings to support what she's doing in game development, and be able to supported by very large organizations like WWF. And so she's really just kind of created this space for herself out of that. We also have somebody who went through our data science program who started their own company as well, doing medical diagnostics using AI, which is fantastic. We have lots of people who've moved into corporate and, went and worked for Andela, and now it's Safaricom. So they're sort of people who've been through our entry-level programs. And then at working professionals, we'll hear stories of people coming in and saying, my background's in marketing and PR, but I want to move into technology. And so people would take, for example, our data science part-time program, and now there's a lady called Agnes actually, and now transitioned into the data team at a very well-known fintech here. So, and it's for all ages. I have people reach out to me on LinkedIn and they're like, I'm over 50. Can I still take your classes? I'm like, of course. That's great. There's absolutely the opportunities for everyone.
In fact, I was talking to one of your colleagues, and I've been seeing your ads quite a bit online recently. And I was saying, I saw this Gen AI course, and the way it was described, and I do it already, but there's that sort of itch sometimes when you want a bit more academic grounding. You want something a little bit more structured.
Yeah.
You're kind of doing it in your own Juakali style, and you want something a little bit structured. I was like, the way it was described, I think that's me. I think I need to do this. And I know as a plus 50 person, of course, you're a little bit intimidated, but then you're like, yeah, why not? So I'm actually considering it, just to let you know. You might see me coming up on the register one of these days. I'll watch for that, Moses.
I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, just check it out.
Yeah.
So let's look about the future. Let's talk about the way forward, 2 to 5 years out.
Yeah.
Where's Moringa? What are you doing? What are you accomplishing? What does that, big, bright picture look like?
Yeah. So one is we have a full range of programs in all of the verticals across all of the different learning pathways. And that includes more sort of mid to senior level advanced programs as well. So we're really focused on that. We are multi-country across Pan-Africa.
Nice.
So working across lots of different areas, and we're known as the place. If you want to study tech, data, or AI on the continent, Moringa is where you go. And there's something for everybody on that.
Ambitious.
Yeah.
And I can almost see the roadmap, probably Lagos, possibly South Africa somewhere, maybe Ghana, maybe Uganda.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that with online learning, then actually that just spreads to everywhere.
It just becomes a virtual model.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just goes across the board.
Exactly.
And I think it's wonderful to think that already, I think the DNA is there, right? Because you're building programs that are already globally compatible.
Absolutely.
And then at the same time, contextually African relevant. So the idea, I think, is really that you already have the foundation to really become a Pan-African business.
Yeah.
Across the board. Also, access and affordability, that tends to be an issue with learning. And I don't know how Moringa is priced, how it sort of fares. Is it easy to access? Maybe you also have financing options for those who might not find it affordable. How do you make sure that this is as accessible as possible to everyone?
Sure, yeah. So we talked about access a little bit from a sort of learning model perspective with part-time and remote. But when it comes to affordability, we really look at what our prices. So if we think about our working professionals, we sort of understand what the competitive market looks like at that, and so we price accordingly, but also to value, because we know that our programs are rigorous and really give you the practical skills. When it comes to our bootcamps, which are our longer programs and therefore have the higher price point, we have a few different options to work with on that. One is that we offer installment plans.
Oh, nice.
And so there's an option to pay as you go at the end of each of our modules or phases. Then you can actually pay for the next phase. So that's one. And then secondly, we often have a number of scholarships that are available for people who are coming from low-income backgrounds.
Oh, nice.
We have some important partnerships with organizations and have had with organizations like MasterCard Foundation and I&M Foundation, who have really sponsored a lot of people to go through
fantastic.
our programs. And we're hoping to be able to announce some more scholarships coming up shortly with that. So,
oh, that's wonderful. What sort of legacy do you see Moringa living in the market, whether it's Kenya or the Pan-African situation? What do you think that legacy looks like?
Yeah, I think that legacy looks like people in jobs and people earning income and people who are really coming into the world, as I said, not just Kenya, but the world, ready for these jobs of the future.
And the future of work.
Absolutely, the future of work. Our logo talks about future-ready tech skilling. We talked about our vision, right? Developing the tech talent that the world needs. And so our legacy is to take learners on the African continent and have them ready for these opportunities for the future and the world.
We've talked about a lot, and I imagine there's so much on your plate. But what I say maybe the one or two big challenges that you're facing in your role as a CEO? What keeps you up awake at night as the leader of Moringa?
Yeah, I think we've alluded to it already, Moses. Everything's just changing so fast, and we really want to make sure that we're quick to market with the programs that will help people be ready for the jobs of the future. So we're spending a lot of our time right now focusing on how we do that and how we get our turnaround even faster so that these programs, everything gets incorporated into our programs really quickly, the existing ones, and we get to market really fast with new programs and that we're updating them constantly. So I would say that's the big thing that's keeping us focused and right now. And then, as I look 3 years out, always thinking about how we're going Pan-African.
Yeah. So I'd like you to sort of give us maybe some nuggets of wisdom. And I want to look at two scenarios.
Okay.
One is the high school leaver or the university student who's curious about a career in technology. Maybe they're intimidated. Maybe they feel they were never quite cut out for this. What would you say to somebody who's wondering or considering if a place like Moringa is actually for them?
Well, I'd recommend taking our introductory programs. They're short, to the point, and just give you a taste of what it's like to work at Moringa, as well as give you a heads up for moving into our bootcamp programs if you decide to do that. So I'd encourage that as a way of thinking about, is this right for you? Reach out to our alum. Most people have Moringa alumni on their LinkedIn. So reach out and talk to people, talk to our enrollment team, and just really help understand, what it's like to go through our programs. Come to our open days and admission days. There's a lot of ways to get a lot of information before you actually have to make that decision.
Fantastic. And I just love the idea that you can just use the introductory to kind of test the waters, get a sense, is it really for me? Sometimes people love the idea of something and then the reality is like, whoa, that's a bit too much. Or they're going like, oh, this actually looks okay. I think I'd like to go to the next level. So they have that opportunity to taste it before making the commitment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about the working professional who has the same concerns? Maybe they've been in the same, job for 20 years. They see tech is blowing up everywhere. They start seeing Moringa online. They start wondering, what are the things that you would tell that person?
Yeah. So again, programs like our Gen AI program are very accessible because they're pretty short, to the point, a few hours, a few nights every week for a few weeks. So it's not that big a commitment to test something like that. And then you can decide if you want to move into something more advanced, something a bit longer, and see how that is.
Yes.
Again, our enrollment teams can always put you in touch with alumni who've been through the program. A lot of people know somebody who's been through Moringa, so you can always get that through word of mouth. So yeah.
I've gotten calls of more than a few times like, look, my daughter's kind of in the middle. Where do you think? I'm like, yeah, go for it. Moringa is good. I always recommend you guys. So learning technology skills can be intense, right? And again, this is technical stuff. And I think the habits, the mindset, the discipline to just follow through. What have you seen in your most successful students who have sort of thrived through what Moringa offers?
Yeah, so I would say one is they come in with a knowledge that this is going to be rigorous and that they're prepared to put in the time and the commitment to really get the most out of this.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's number one. Number two is they set up support systems for themselves, both within the class. There's a lot of peer learning within the class.
Nice.
And a lot of group work. So you'd naturally meet people to kind of like help you all get through it together. And outside of that, with your family, with whether that's your parents, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your children. They also create support networks outside of this to sort of support them as they go through. And so I would say that that, and then really asking for help when you need it. The whole reason that we're very committed to our technical mentors and being instructor guided is so that people can get help when they need it, and they can go and say, I'm really struggling with this, or I'm really struggling with that. And so don't be afraid to ask for help.
So I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm thinking about what skills, technical and non-technical, do you believe will be non-negotiable for African professionals over the next decade, regardless of the industries that they're working in?
Yeah, well, decade, that definitely is a crystal ball. So let's just say, we can't even predict what things are going to look like in a couple of years, right? The way things are moving so fast. And so when we think about that from a technical perspective, I think honestly, just knowing what technology can do and how it works is probably one of the most important skill sets that you can get, because it's understanding the foundations, it's understanding the principles. Then no matter what the tools are that come, you can apply the same foundations and principles to those tools and be effective with them. You and I were talking earlier about, the new AI tools that are coming in, and how the more you already know, the better you're actually able to use them, and the better you get with what's coming out. And a lot of people say, well, why do I need to learn to code? Isn't AI just going to do that anymore? And this question actually came up at an event I was at on Friday, and Boshiko Gatau and Bright Gamelli were on that panel, very big voices in Kenyan tech. And everyone's like, actually, you nearly need to understand how everything fits together. You need to understand what coding can do. You need to understand how systems work together. You need to understand architecture. You need to understand data structures. And when you need to understand security implications. When you have all of those things and that understanding, then you can really use AI to be truly effective. But without that, you're flying blind. And so I would say, one, just general technological literacy is super important, and even more important in the future. Number two is absolutely AI literacy, and just knowing what are the tools are, what the tools can do, and how to best get the most out of them. And then number three, data literacy. Data is the new oil. AI runs on data. Everything is about data. So really being comfortable working with data, I think, is really critical. So from a technical perspective, I would say those three things. From a non-technical perspective, we talked a little bit before about critical thinking. I would also say curiosity. Things are changing so fast. You're going to continually need to be upskilling yourself. And so you really need to just have that curiosity and that urge to learn how to learn and continually be keeping up with what's the latest things. Collaboration, more and more important in this world of AI, because while AI does the automated tasks for us, that means we get to collaborate more cross-functionally and do a lot more innovative and strategic thinking and developing. And so that's going to continue to be huge. And of course, communication and being able to explain and influence others through what it is, through the learnings that you have through data.
That is a wonderful checklist. I think you've really covered it.
4 C's.
The technical and the sort of the non-technical. And I think maybe the biggest challenge there would be the attitude that people adopt to the reality that this is now in front of us. And, if you're resistant to this new form of things, where, even the modern business leader has to have some technical grounding given the way the world is evolving around technology. And then subsequently their whole attitude towards, picking up these things, which they might say, well, that's the stuff that my kid is learning, versus they now have to get some kind of, I don't say you need to understand the technology fully, but you need to understand how it works.
Yes, yeah.
That's what you need to achieve.
And get the most out of it.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
And how to use which technologies to solve which problems.
Correct.
And yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. And finally, I'd like you to leave our audience maybe with a nugget of wisdom about learning resilience. You come from Oz, so I know you have the Aussie grits.
Yes.
The famous Aussie grits, which I think you're a testament to.
Yeah.
And also career building in a fast-changing digital world where, of course, the future work is changing. What are the nuggets, one or two, that you might leave our audience with?
Yeah, honestly, I think the biggest one is just that curiosity. Learn how to learn.
Yeah.
Learn how to learn fast and continually learn. Learning agility. Learn from here and apply it there. Learn. That's what's creating the careers of the future, because they're going to pivot a lot more than we've seen in the past.
Nikki, that was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I'm delighted we finally got to do this.
Me
Having
too,
spoken
Moses.
about this probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes.
And also I'm delighted and congratulations on what you're accomplishing at Moringa. We can't wait to see what the next 2 to 5 years looks like. And I'm sure even if something comes up beyond AI, you guys will be ready to sort of transition the market to the same. So all the best, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Moses. It was great to be here.
So there you have it. Nikki Germany from Moringa, giving us all the details around technology and education and the impact they're having, not just in Kenya, but also across the continent, building globally capable and competent technology professionals for the world and not just for Kenya or Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you in the next edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. We'll catch you then.